This is Zeal, and I'm going to be going over an overview of the Guardian specialization changes that are coming up with the new expansion and how they're going to be affecting Guardian. It's not meant to be a build guide or anything since we are missing a lot of information. So I'm going to go over what we have so far. Aside from the specialization lines, they said we were getting some traits as default. So we're getting improved spirit weapon duration, elite duration, and consecrated grounds going to be just default now. They're changing a few skills such as healing breeze, shelter, and tombs to be considered under a category. Don't know about the rest, but healing breeze is a shout. So stuff like this would work with runes like soldier runes use a shout. Clear condition is made so it triggers things like that. So we're getting the same trait lines as before, but a lot of traits got changed, combined, moved to different lines, or some got removed altogether. There's still going to be additional trait lines that will specialize the Guardian, but we don't know about them yet. Guessing one has to do with being able to equip a bow. You now only get to choose from 3 trait lines, and you get all the minor traits, which are pretty much the ones that you get from putting 1, 3, 5 points into the line, and you only get to choose one like you did before for Adept, Master, and Grandmaster. This is the new Zeal line. It's really strong now. You're going to be taking it no matter what for PVE. All the minors are the same as before except for symbolic power. You now get a chance to burn as well as the damage. This is a good thing because burning will be stacking in intensity instead of duration now, so it might be harder to keep it up. Keeping up burning is pretty important for Fiery Wrath. So you can see that Scepter got nerfed pretty hard because it's in the same line as Fiery Wrath. So you're going to be losing that multiplier there. And Zeal Scepter is not a damage multiplier either. If you're doing solo content, Zeal Scepter will be better. But if you're in a group, then it will be worse than Fiery Wrath. Binding Jeopardy got nerfed. It's now 3 stacks instead of 5, but they last a little bit longer. This is probably due to a trait in Radiance. Taking the 2 traits would be pretty good for hammer builds if you're not using greatsword with it. And Zealous Blade got a pretty big buff. You get the 2-handed mastery for just the greatsword that got added into it, so it's really stronger now. And Kindle Zeal, I guess it's worth taking in some cases where you're not using a greatsword. The major change to Zeal was Symbolic Avenger. You get 20% more damage if an enemy is standing in your symbol. This makes Mace a lot better than Sword now. Sword's not worth it anymore, especially since they got rid of the damage multiplier to it. Hammer also became stronger because of this. The rotations are also going to change quite a bit so that you want to maintain symbols as much as possible. This also might make Scepter not really worth using. This is the new Radiance line. Unfortunately, the 10% damage multiplier, big reason why we traded so heavily into Radiance, got removed. We got it replaced with Radiant Power now, 25% chance to crit against the burning foe. It could very well make up for it depending on the group. Right-handed Strength got changed a little bit. Sword skills recharge faster now, but who really cares? Sword got tossed in the dumpster, and recharging the skills that we don't use anyway won't help it at all. Inner Fire might be pretty decent for soloing things. Retribution could be good for Greatsword, especially if you trade in the virtues and you're spamming F1. You get 10% more damage while under the effects of retaliation. You should be able to keep it up a decent amount of time. The Iron line may very well out-damage Radiance. The main selling point of the Radiance line is how Radiant Fire is going to work. You now gain Zealot's Flame when you do a crit. We don't know if you actually get Zealot's Fire afterwards too, but you would be able to get 2 of these off in a Greatsword Mace rotation. Possibly you might even want to keep it for a 3rd one. This would add quite a bit of damage over focus. Now with Wrath of Justice, you strike an enemy with Virtue of Justice's active effect, and they get hit with a Signet of Wrath, which immobilizes them. It's probably the reason why Binding Jeopardy got nerfed to 3 stacks instead of 5. This would be pretty good if you're running Hammer and Radiant Fire doesn't work as we hope it does, since you won't be getting as much retaliation because you won't be running a Greatsword. The only worthwhile Grandmaster trait will be Amplified Wrath. Hopefully that'll be a little bit better now that you get stack burning in intensity instead of duration. This is the new Valor line, and it's new and not improved at all. It's even worse than before, because before you could take 2 points in it if you really didn't need much support to get retributive armor, but now that you have to invest the whole trait line in it out of 3 trait lines possible to get, it's not worth it one bit. All it has is selfish support for the most part, or very underwhelming support. It really has no place in a PVE build anymore. It's more for world vs. world PvP. This is new honor line. It's looking really appealing because symbols got buffed so much, and rid of persistence would buff them even more in your build. Fortunately for the minor traits, the damage multiplier when your endurance is not full got removed. Instead we get Virtual Resolve as a passive effect of 15% more endurance regen. Mace trait got moved here. It functions differently though. Unfortunately they got rid of the 5% more damage. Instead we get our recharges reduced on the skills. This might make it more worthwhile to camp it for a third symbol before swapping. Powering Might unfortunately got no buff to it. I was hoping they would get rid of the recharge. As a 1 second recharge, which is actually on the tooltip now, the Might doesn't last long enough for it to be good with the cooldown either. And the main point to take the honor line is rid of persistence, since symbols do so much more damage now. They combine all 3 symbol traits into one. Symbols last longer, they're larger, and they heal allies. This is going to add a lot more damage, as well as help keep Scholar up between this and Mace. This is the new Virtues line. The minors are pretty much the same, except for Power the Virtuous now grants 15% faster recharge to Virtues. I guess this is to help make up for them getting rid of points in the trading in the lines, though they are giving you some points into things to help make up for the loss. Unfortunately, Master of Consecrations and Unskilled Contender in the same trait line, so you can't take both. It's unfortunate because they added a nice balance between damage increase and support at the same time for the line. Absolute Resolution hasn't changed and is a good trait choice. Virtuous Mallet replaced the old hammer trait. It gives the new condition of slow, which makes enemies' abilities recharge slower. This could be good for fractal bosses that hit really hard, like Mossman and Archdiviner. For Grandmaster, Battle Presence is pretty decent between the symbols healing and the mace, and this giving everybody Virtual Resolve passive effect. It will really help keep up the Scholar buff on everybody so that everybody does more damage. Or you can take Indomitable Courage, and that will help you save a utility slot if you don't really need much stability in a fight. So I just threw together some builds of what you would be running, assuming the specialization lines that they haven't announced yet are not worth running. And this is what you would want to run if you really don't need much or any utility from the Virtues line. You would run Zeal, Radiance, and Honor. And this would be buffing your symbols quite a bit from the honor line, making them last longer. You would get the mace trait, the greatsword trait, and lots of crit chance. And the traits at the top are generally what you would run, except for the ones at the bottom, which be like Binding Jeopardy and Wrath of Justice if you're using Hammer, and Radiant Fire doesn't work the way we hope. Inner Fire possibly if you're soloing. Radiant Fire if it works the way we're hoping it does, and the rest is pretty straightforward. As far as more supportive build goes, where you actually need some reflex and condition removal, you want to take Virtues. I'm not really sure if Radiance or Honor would be a better choice for DPS. Still a lot of unknowns, and we still need to work out the most optimal rotations and run DPS calcs. Either way, it's still the way to go for Scepter builds, since Virtues will actually add damage and Honor will not. I did pretty much the same thing here. The typical trait you would run would be at the top and your different options, depending on the notes I said before, which weapons that you have, if you're solo, if you need some supportive skill for the occasion. And if Honor ends up being better than Radiance, this is pretty much what you would run. It's a lot less choices. So all the builds here are pretty much the speculation, since we don't have all the information and we haven't run calcs yet to get the most optimal setups and rotations. I'm sure some things will change and some things will get nerfed, like the symbol traits, since they seem pretty overpowered, but the state of Guardians now in the meta with the DPS, they could use a bit of a buff. Once all the information is finalized and the patch is out, I plan on making a guide like I usually do with all the gear, builds, and rotations. Hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.